Out here today, this looks like any typical riverfront or beachfront. You'd be surprised at the stories that the hill behind me here could tell. The things that are tucked away and hidden. But if you were here in 1861 and 1862, and you were looking in that direction, what you would see is a massive fortification sticking out from the side of that bank. A huge fort. And it meant business. And today we're out at Fort Boykin. We're going to explore what they have to offer inside here. In 1621, on this side of the James River, it's decided that there's going to be two settlements out here. And the two settlements are going to be Bennett's Welcome and Bass's Choice. And at that time, those two major settlements come under attack. That leads to the fort that we're at today. This is Fort Boykin. We're going to roam around and check out what it has to offer. Already, I'm standing in the parade grounds, and I'm thoroughly impressed. The fortifications around me here, they're pretty massive. And where I'm standing at right now is just one of the many points. There's a huge black walnut tree that's inside here too, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. It's a protected tree, and it's over 200 years old. The beauty inside this fort, I don't know, it's like a tucked away thing out here in Virginia. I don't think there's too many travelers that come out here, but if you get the chance to come out to Smithfield and check this place out, I highly recommend it. So in March of 1622, there is an attack by the natives in the area, attacking the colonists that are out here on this side of the James River. Hundreds of people end up dead. Some pretty prominent people of their time out here trying to settle the area. And it was a land grab, just like anything else. Explorers from around the world were going, at that time, all over the world, snatching up property from indigenous people. But these colonists were out here trying to live peacefully on land that they probably knew was going to come under attack at some point in time, because realistically, if it were you or me, we would probably do the same thing. So those hundreds of people are dead, and the House of Burgesses on the other side of the James River at Jamestown decides that there needs to be a fort out here. That it's kind of like a lookout point, where there's going to be weapons placed. The king's armament's going to be out here, and the townspeople in these two colonies, or these two settlements, are going to be able to fall back to this point, and if they need protection. And not only that, there will be soldiers placed inside here, trained soldiers that are going to look out and give an advance notice that something's about to happen. So it takes them about 6 months to create this fort. Eventually, it earns the name the castle because of the size of the banks and the fort. It's triangular in shape, and in 1623, this fort takes its first steps into the service of this area as a lookout point for those two settlements. Now, the fort that you'll see here today, it's not the same fortification from 1623, not even close. It's massive. It's a huge fortification. And the reason why is it underwent 3 periods to 4 periods of basically being re-engineered. From 1623 to about the American Revolution, it stayed the same shape. And then during the American Revolution, they refortified. They made it stronger. As a matter of fact, one of the historical figures I like to talk about all the time, Banastre Tarleton, actually came out to this point and with his cavalry was going to attack, but he was soundly defeated and fended off at this location here. So that's kind of some unique history along the James to know that from my childhood, Banastre Tarleton was the enemy at the Battle of the Cowpens, and here he has connected me to Fort Boykin. So that's pretty cool. After the American Revolution, the War of 1812 comes along, and there's another refortification. This time the fort's shape has changed a bit. And during the War of 1812, British soldiers actually come ashore out here and attack this fort. But they're soundly defeated, and there's no way for them to get inside the fort. And they stop their attack point here at Fort Boykin. You fast forward to the American Civil War, the fort is still out here. It's still serving the same purpose it has for many, many, many years. And along comes the Confederacy. Now, Robert E. Lee sees this point out here as a place that can protect the James River from the Union gunboats that are coming up and down. And so he decides to send off one of his engineers from the Confederate Army to repurpose this 7-pointed location and to make it stronger. And that's what they do. They come out here and they redesign it again. And before we go take a look at this beautiful walnut tree that's over 200 years old, we'll talk a little bit about the redesigning of the fort. Lee orders Andrew Talcott to come out here. He's an engineer. And he takes a look at the place. And he realizes that there's some things that need to be done here to make this a strong point. So he spends a few months redesigning, re-engineering, and he builds one of the largest fortifications on this side of the James River. Re-strengthens and repurposes the walls of this fort. But little do the Confederacy or anybody in the Confederacy, little do they know that this place isn't going to be in service much longer. Because once the Union Army is able to break past the ports out there at Fortress Monroe and get into this area and defeat the Virginian and all of that, this place is just going to be one of the many forts that fall along the way headed towards Richmond. Now, that tree behind me there, that's the walnut tree that's over 200 years old. The estimations are anywhere between 225 to 250 years of age. That means that this tree was likely sitting inside this fort during the American Civil War and possibly even during the War of 1812 when it was just a small tree. That's pretty significant. That's an old tree. and a witness to all the history that happened inside here. And I could see that if the tree is large at that time during the American Civil War, how it would make a nice shade tree inside this fort. Because all the trees that you see on these banks, they're not going to be here. This is just going to be dirt piled high. You're going to see dirt in this open area here, possibly grass. And this is going to be the parade ground right here. This is the open parade ground where you're going to have musters in the morning. Soldiers will be out here lined up, reporting with their guns, reporting with their musters, and getting ready for the day's work here inside the fort. Now we're about to pass some of the walls here inside this fort, and hopefully you can see the shapes and the sizes as we go through it. Now this one section is going to be on my left-hand side, is going to be one of the points that when the Union soldiers came back, they actually imploded it. They came in and blew it up. This is where a lot of the ammunition was stored, cannonballs and things like that. You can see the shape and the size here. Now, in and around the area of this fort, before any of the real fighting takes place, the 3rd and the 9th Virginia are out here camping in this area. Now, both of those units actually fight in many of the battles in the American Civil War here in Northern Virginia, Central Virginia, and Southern Virginia. They also fight in the Battle of Gettysburg. The 9th takes a part in the Pickett's Charge, for example. But also, the 3rd has Colonel Roger Pryor in it. Now, Colonel Roger Pryor is a newspaper editor, an orator, and a fire eater. At the time, he's one of the men that are pushing for secession. After the American Civil War is over with, however, he ends up folding back into society. He becomes a member of the House of Representatives for the state of Virginia. So it's kind of an amazing mix of history there. A man that's one time considered a traitor to the country eventually comes back to becoming a man that serves the country in the House of Representatives. Well, this place was so big and had such a rich story that I needed to come back out here a second time and try to fill in the gaps and check it out again, really. You can tell by the jacket that I'm wearing that it's actually cold out here this morning compared to what it was just a week or two ago. But the story here really starts in the early 1860s with this place being built or rebuilt from what it was before. The fort was being repurposed essentially, but the fight starts on May 8th, 1862. So now I've got the James River behind me here. And I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is kind of like my makeshift map of what the fort's supposed to look like on the inside here. So you can see the design of this thing. It's got a lot of points to it. And there's pretty much just about everything that was there during the American Civil War is still here inside this fort. It's just eroded or has been blown up during 1862. And this well, they think the well that's here that I'm about to pass right now was actually put in place before the American Civil War. It was possibly here during one of the original fortifications, maybe possibly even as far back as the American Revolution. Not the bricks itself, but the actual well that was dug down. They did some archaeology here at one point in time. And I want to say the archaeology was done during the 1960s, which a lot of archaeology was done at that time because of the centennial of the American Civil War. And down on the bottom of this, they found all kinds of artifacts. They found cannonballs, unexpended ordnance, things like that. This is pretty neat. So here's that L-shaped fortification right here. It's on the map. I'll put the map up real quick so you can see what I'm talking about. And you can see the item that's off to the right-hand side. It looks like it's shaped like an L. That's one of the casemates. Now the map comes down, and you can see here, this is the jetted out point for that L. And then there's the long line of the L right here. Still maintaining its shape. Now this location, it's got areas in it that are not very well taken care of. You can see the sign. It says gun salient here. So this is a salient that sticks out and pointed in this direction. And up here you can actually see the shelf where wooden platform would have been placed. Guns would have been slid up and into place here at one of the salients at Fort Boykin. It still maintains its structure, its shape, and everything here. This is pretty amazing. And then the curvature of the actual earthwork goes up like this. I don't know if you can see that in the video, but the bank is just massive. And one of the important stories out here isn't even about the American Civil War. It's about the private landowners that took care of this place for a long time. The Jordan sisters, Ella, Elizabeth, and Susan. Their family had this property for a very long time. Colonel Josiah William Jordan and Frances Mosley Dolly Jordan from 1841 to 1849. The sisters then eventually acquired this property, and they turned the property into somewhat of a garden, a peaceful place for them to hang out. And they preserved the history here. It was very important what they've done, because now it still exists to this day. The state owns it, and you can walk around and kind of take a pass back through history, if you will. Unfortunately, inside the fort there is a privy, if you will, a John, right here, instead of in the parking lot. But still, it's pretty neat to be able to walk around in here and see the massive size of fortifications like this one. That's well above my head. That has to be probably 13, 14 feet right there, all the way to the top. It's real cool. Now I'm about to walk through an area. You can take a look at the fortifications on either side of me as I'm walking. It's pretty neat. I mean, you almost get swallowed up in here by the size of some of these dirt mounds that are still in place. This is huge. There's nothing like it. So now earlier we walked past the L shape that I was talking about on that map. And I'll put the map up again to show you where Magazine B is located. Now if you take a look at that map, you can see that kind of odd shaped item there, kind of rounded on one end, and it's just off to the other side of where Magazine A is. I'll pull it back down. We're at Magazine B right now. There's a little stick in the ground or pole that has Magazine B on it. But you can see where the entrance to this magazine would have been. But it had been basically blown up by the soldiers that came inside. They came in here and destroyed portions of the fort so it wouldn't be used. This is one of those areas. Now, why would they do that? Well, if you don't want your enemy to come back into the territory and reuse this, you want them to either think twice, or you want it to take so long for them to repair this that they decide it's not going to be worth their time. You have to understand, the United States Army at that time and the Navy were fighting on massive swaths of land. They were having to cover a lot of territory in the South, and you can't station men at every single angle and ensure that they're not able to come back in and take over the property. So if they have to abandon this fort and leave it without men, then one of the important areas here is the casemate. That's why it's destroyed. So I love seeing history stick itself up out of the dirt like this. I don't know if you can see it or not, but that's some of the original bricks from the actual casemate or the magazine that was out here at Fort Boykin. Of course, the explosion blew any kind of solid brickwork or anything that was out here up. But you can see portions of it still sticking out here. It's pretty amazing stuff. May 8th comes along. It's 1862. And these soldiers have been out here for a while. And they're hearing rumors about what's coming. The Galena's on the way. Galena and 2 other ships are out there in the river. And they're making their way over here. They don't have to get too close. The ordnance that they fire from those ships can be fired at such a great distance that the 10 guns that are stationed inside this fort here can't effectively fire and hit those ships. So they can sit right off the coastline there and lob shells into this fortification all day long. And it will go uncontested. Well, about an hour after the conflict, shell after shell coming into here, shell after shell coming into Smithfield, which is off in that direction just a couple of miles. The soldiers inside this fort realize that it's useless. They have to give this place up. There's no reason for them to stay here, because if they do, they're just going to end up either prisoner or dead. So the leadership inside the fort decides to evacuate. Now, he makes a sort of a frantic evacuation, really. The soldiers that are stationed on the outside here push off, and they're heading down towards, and I always butcher the name of this place, Fort Huger, or Huger. It's spelled like Hugger, H-U-G-E-R. But they head off to that fort over there, and they're moving further down. Well, the Galena's heading in that direction as well. That fort, one fortification after another, is just completely evacuated. And what they leave inside this place is a treasure trove of things. There's ordnance, ammunition, guns, rifles, all kinds of stuff are in here. May 17th, the United States Army and Navy comes back in this direction. They head back to this fort, and they have a purpose. And that purpose is to destroy as much as they can so that this place can no longer be in service. And that's exactly what they do. They come in and they blow up the magazines. Some of the fort walls can't handle the explosions. And effectively, May 17th of 1862, the United States Army and Navy have ended the service of this fort to either side in the conflict and its future. After that point, it is no longer really ever used for military service, and it becomes a thing of the past. And besides that, when you move off into future conflicts, these earthen fortifications are really not going to be that useful to the modern warfare. So that's it. Over 200 years of service, once to the colonies of the King and Queen and the settlement of Jamestown, to the United States of America during the during the War of 1812, to the colonies that are trying to become a country during the American Revolution, to the United States Army and Navy, and then eventually to the Confederacy that's trying to utilize this place as a strong point. The history is over with. Time grabs a hold of it, wraps it up in trees and undergrowth, long weeds, and a family keeps the property, keeps it exactly the same. And then, off in the distant future, the sisters have turned a portion of this into a garden. And over at, I believe it's Fort Eustis. Fort Eustis was doing target practice out on the water out here. And this was, I think, during World War I. Might have been World War II, but I'm not 100% certain. I'll have to fact check that. But as they're doing target practice out there, they usually shut the waterways down to keep anybody from being in danger, and it never gets over this far. One of those sisters are actually sitting inside here, and a shell that either skips off the water or it gets lobbed into the fort. So the fortification comes under attack yet again, and it surrenders yet again, because the sister has to notify the people at the other fort, hey, you guys are lobbing shells inside of Smithfield. And of course, it never happens again, and they stop doing that dangerous practice. But the fort survives. The sisters keep it. Eventually, the place is turned over to the state of Virginia, and the surrounding areas gather funds and turned it into a park that you can enjoy. So now there's about 18 acres of land out here that's completely preserved. The old fortification walls, the big beautiful walls like you see here, they're just ready for you to come out here and check them out. So come on out and check this place out. It's worth your time, I promise. I've always been of the understanding that history itself it's really nothing more than what you do, the actions you take while you're waiting to die. We only live on this earth for so long. We only get to participate in this thing called life for so long. And then one day it's over. And then somebody, like me, maybe like you, finds a photograph in an antique store. And they start asking questions. Who is this person? What did they do? Or maybe it's a piece of land. Why is this dirt piled up so perfectly? Who was here? What took place? We'll never know 100% every little thing that went on during the American Civil War. We'll never fully comprehend and understand the feelings of every single man, woman, and child during that time. But we can put ourselves in our way of thinking in their footsteps, retrace their footsteps, and think to ourselves, what would we be thinking? Now, it's going to be a biased thought because we're living in our time today and we know what we know. We have the advantage of knowing the future and the advantage of knowing everything that they didn't know. But go out there and make history for yourself. That's why I try not to get stuck in one thing for too long. Get out there, travel around, see these places, and make your own history. I've enjoyed taking you to Fort Boykin, and I hope you come back and check out some more videos. Till next time, this is History with Waffles saying go make your own history.